In this video, we will be reading together the first 112 lines in John Dryden's translation of the Metamorphoses, Book 1. And I would like you guys to check the link and finish page 1 through 4 before we start reading together. And if you can't find the page number, just read from the first line of bodies change to various forms till the last line here, and Earth was metamorphosed into man. And you can pause the video and go to the link and read the passage first. And I want you guys to read it first and just take about 15 minutes, 10 minutes, and try to understand it. And we will come back and read it together. Pause the video. Welcome back. So now we will be reading together the first 112 lines in John Dryden's translation of Ovid's Metamorphoses, Book 1. All right, so let's start from the beginning. Of bodies change to various forms I sing, ye gods, from whom these miracles did spring. Inspire my numbers with celestial heats, till I my long laborious work completes, and add perpetual tenure to my rhymes, deduce from nature's birth to Caesar's time. Before the seas and this terrestrial bowl, and heaven's high canopy that covers all, one was the face of nature, if a face, rather a rude and indigested mass, a lifeless lump unfashioned and unframed, of jarring seeds and justly chaos named. No sun was lighted up the world to view, no moon did yet her blunted horns renew, nor yet was earth suspended in the sky, nor poised did on her own foundations lie. Nor seas about the shores their arms had thrown, but earth and air and water were in one. Thus air was void of lights, and earth unstable, and water's dark abyss unnavigable. No certain form on any was impressed. All were confused, and each disturbed the rest. For hot and cold were in one body fixed, and soft with hard, and light with heavy mixed. Alright, so these are the first 24 lines, and I want you guys to pay attention to the beginning. So he's introducing his subjects, of bodies change. So that's what he's writing about, of bodies change. He's introducing his main theme of the transformations from the very first line. Imprima fert animus mutatas dicere formas corpora. In Noah fert animus mutatas dicere formas corpora. So I'm seeing our forms being changed into new bodies. So that's the first line. It's saying that I'm seeing about transformations. And this is the subject of the epic. And this is a pretty conventional move. So in a classical epic, the poet usually starts by introducing his subject, and also by invoking the gods, and he goes on invoking the gods, invoking some sort of divine power. And this has to do with the classical perception of a poet. So the Greeks and the Romans believe that a good poet is in some way a prophet who's trying to convey the divine message to mortals, trying to convey some universal truths, divine message, some divine inspiration to mortals. So now Ovid is setting up himself and elevating himself to this sort of position as a prophet, trying to convey the divine inspiration to mortals. So he's calling upon the gods to inspire his epic, his poem. Inspire my numbers with celestial heat, till I my laborious work complete and add perpetual tenure to my rhymes. Deduce and he's also describing his timeline. He's writing from the nature's birth and Caesar's time, so his own time. All right, so that's the introduction. Intro. And now he's going on to describe the condition of Earth before the formation of our universe, the condition of the universe. So he's saying that there's different elements, right, of jarring seeds, different elements. And he's saying that there's chaos there, and he's saying that air was void of light, and earth unstable, water dark abyss unnavigable, no form on any was impressed. But we see that he's saying that there were light and earth and water, there were different elements, but they are just not in shape, and they're in a condition called chaos. Over confused. For hot and cold were in one body, hot and cold were in one body fixed, and soft with hard and light with heavy mixed. They're all mixed together. What is interesting here is I want you guys to compare this passage to the biblical story of Genesis, and how in Genesis 1 the universe, the primeval universe, is being described. So in the biblical tradition, the universe, before coming to shape, is basically nothing, and God creates a universe ex nihilo, from nothing. But in Ovid's perception of in Ovid's universe, there were elements predating the universe. So it's just a condition called chaos, but there were different sorts of elements being mixed together instead of a void, nothing at all. And this has something to do with the Epicureanist ideal. So Epicureanism was a school of philosophy you guys should know pretty well, because I talked a lot about Epicureanism in our previous semesters, previous weeks when we were reading Horace. So you guys should know that Epicurean was a pretty materialistic philosophy, and many Epicureans didn't believe in afterlife, didn't believe in something that is not existential, something that is not perceivable. So Ovid actually read a work by Lucretius, who was a famous Epicurean in ancient Rome, and he wrote a poem called De Rerum Natura, so on the nature of things, and in which he proposed in which he argued about atoms, and he argued about this materialistic worldview. He argued about that nothing could be created just out of nothing, and there's some basic units of our universe which is called atoms, So of course we know that there's some smaller units like quarks today, but they used to be called they used to have this concept of atom, which basically means a particle which cannot be further divided. And these atoms forms all elements and all different substances in our universe. And you cannot just generate atoms out of nothing. So even before the universe came into shape, there were different elements warring in the universe, mixed together. So in all its universe, the world is not created ex nihilo. And that's pretty interesting, I think. Alright, so we'll go on to line 25. But God or nature, while they thus contend to these intestine discords put an end, then earth from air and seas from earth were driven, and grosser air sunk from ethereal heaven. Thus disembroiled, they take their proper place, the necks of kin contiguously embrace, and foes are sundered by a larger space. The force of fire ascended first on high, and took its dwelling in the vaulted sky. The air succeeds in lightness next to fire, whose atoms from our inactive earth retire. Earth sinks beneath, and draws a numerous throng of ponderous, thick, unwieldy seas along. About her coast unruly waters roar, and rising on a ridge insult the shore. That's when the god, whatever god was he, had formed the whole, and made the parts agree, that no unequal portion might be found. He molded earth into a spacious round, and with a breath he gave the wind to blow, and bade the congregated waters flow. He had the running springs, and standing lakes, and bounding banks for winding rivers makes. Some parts in earth are swallowed up, at most in ample oceans, disembogued, are lost. He shades the woods and valleys, he restrains with rocky mountains, and extends the plains. And as 5 zones the ethereal regions bind, 5 correspondents are to earth assigned. The sun with rays directly darting down fires all beneath, and fires the middle zone. The 2 beneath the distant poles complain of endless winter and perpetual rain. Betwixt the extremes 2 happier climates hold the temper that partakes of hot and cold. The fields of liquid air enclosing all surround the compass of this earthly bowl. The lighter parts lie next the fires above, the grosser near the watery surface move. Sea clouds are spread, and storms engender there, and thunders the voice which wretched mortals fear, and winds that on their wings cold winter bear. Nor were those blustering brethren left at large, on seas and shores their fury to discharge. Bound as they are, and circumscribed in place, they ran the world resistless where they pass, and mighty marks of mischief leave behind. Such is the rage of their tempestuous kind. First Eurus to the rising morn is sent, the regions of the balmy continents, and eastern realms the early Persians round, to greet the blessed appearance of the sun. Westward, the wanton cipher wings his flight, pleased with the remnants of departing light. Fierce Boreas, with his offspring, issues forth to invade the frozen wagon of the north. While frowning Auster seeks the southern sphere, and rots with endless rain the unwholesome ear. high o'er the clouds and empty realms of wind, the god of clear space of heaven designed, where fields of light and liquid ether flow, purged from the ponderous dregs of earth below. Scars had the power distinguished these, when straight the stars, no longer overlaid with weight, exert their heads from underneath the mass, and upward shoot, and kindle as they pass, and with diffusive light adorn their heavenly place. Then every void of nature is to supply with forms of gods he fills the vacant sky. New herds of beasts he sends the plains to share, new colonies of birds to people air, and to their oozy beds the Finnish fish repair. Alright. So now it's a pretty long passage, but it's really Ovid is really presenting how a divine force is coming to a power, not necessarily divine, is putting all things in shape. And he presents this kind of ambiguity in this phrase, but God or nature. It's not sure whether it's God or nature who first puts all these warring elements mixed together in shape, and who first introduced order into the universe. But he's saying that there's a power coming here and take the elements into their proper place. And he's saying that he's first separating the elements. So the fire he placed in the higher realm because it's lighter. The Romans believe that fire is a light element, and this of course came from some sort of empirical observation, and which is basically when you burn fire, the fire goes up, right? So they thought fire was lighter, and fire goes to the higher realm of the universe, which was pretty ridiculous sounding in our modern society, but the Romans did believe in that based on their own observation, and they actually believe that fire took its dwelling in the vaulted sky. So he's saying that these fires are forming the stars. Then air succeeds in lightness next to fire. So air occupies a lower space in respect to fire, whose atoms from inactive Earth retire. So the air is being separated from Earth. Atoms, and so he's introducing the concept of atom, which was basically the concept in Lucretius' poem, De Rerum Natura. Earth sinks beneath and draws a numerous throng of ponderers. So he's saying that Earth and water are occupying the lower place. Whatever, and he's also saying that whatever God is creating this sort of order. So it's not sure, it's just a power. It's again this materialistic worldview. So we can perhaps argue that Ovid was actually a very a materialist, and he does not believe in lots of supernatural beings. And even though the epic Metamorphoses is basically a collection of mythological stories, but it's more allegorical perhaps, because from the first the creation of universe episode, which is the episode we are reading now, we see that Ovid he has a pretty ambiguous attitude towards whether the universe was created by a supernatural being or just nature, so power. So that's a pretty interesting aspect to consider when you are reading and interpreting the epic Metamorphoses. They're saying that this power is separating the warring elements into different realms and keeping them in order. And it also mentions the 5 zones. So basically, he's separating the hot and cold elements into 5 main zones, and he adds and he's also creating springs, lakes from these elements. Earth, yeah. There's nothing really for us necessary for us to pay a lot of attention here. It's basically creation, and just know there's a supernatural, not supernatural. There's a power, some sort of power, putting things in order and giving them some sort of shape. And we see that this is actually the first transformation in the epic, which was transforming chaos into order and some designated shapes. That this is a first transformation, and it's not a very obvious transformation in the sense that, for example, a person is being transformed into an animal, but there is some transformation in this episode. Yeah, the fields of air. Yeah, and here he went on saying that which wretched model. Yeah, there's wind. Yeah. So cipher is the west wind, and you should probably know these personified wind. Cipher is the west wind, and Boreas is the north wind. North, and Auster is the south. But it's also yeah, also is the south wind. And he's saying that these winds are being confined in some region, because I think this also has something to do with the Epicureanist ideal, because of course things cannot be created out of nothing. So they believe that wind is actually conserved, the total amount of wind is being conserved in the universe, and when there's more wind, it means that some wind is being released from this kind of confinements, which was of course not very true. But winds are actually the it's actually created through aero movements and temperature change of air, etc. But the Romans Ovid here believes that air is something, wind is something that is constant in our universe, and they're being confined, and when released they just go everywhere, and they just blow. Yeah, and so this is also a very common mythological concept of wind being confined in sort of prison, and you see that in the in Roman mythology, the god Aeolus actually he's the god of the winds, and he confines the winds in a place under sea. and in place in the ocean. Yeah, he's the god of winds, and he actually confines these winds and release. And if the winds are being released, they just go mad. And yeah, so this is what he's describing here. So winds being confined, and being put into their proper place and order. And he's also mentioning the stars. He's mentioning the constellations. The stars are being formed into constellations and in a very orderly manner. And he's also writing about the creation of the earth, the beasts, the birds, and the fish. So he's saying that animals were being created. And you see that the order is actually very similar to the order in which things are being created are actually very similar to the biblical story, in which non-biological matters are first being created, like lights, water, and then you have plants, animals. So it's very similar to the biblical story in some sense. And now we'll just go to the very last part, which was also the rather important parts of the creation of universe here. A creature of more exalted kind was wanting yet, and then was man designed, conscious and of thought, of more capacious breast, for empire form and fit to rule the rest, whether with particles of heavenly fire, the god of nature did his soul inspire, or earth but new divided from the sky, and pliant still retained the ethereal energy, which wise promises tempered into pace, and mixed with living streams in the godlike image cast. Thus, while the mute creation downward bend their sight, and to their earthly mother tend, man looks aloft, and with erected eyes beholds his own hereditary skies. From such rude principles our form began, and earth was metamorphosed into man. So he's saying that the universe needs some sort of more exalted creature. And that is man. So we are the exalted creature being created by Prometheus specifically. But of course, it's he's trying to align with the mythological convention of the time, which stated the Prometheus as the creator of man. But you know, this is more considering the Ovid's perception of the universe, which was, in my opinion, rather materialistic. This is more of a more of a, let's say, is probably just trying to conform with what is the convention of the time, but Prometheus. In mythology, Prometheus created man. But he does mention that man was metamorphosed from earth, right? So he's saying that all comes from these rudimentary elements, like earth, air. These things forms our world, right? And the atoms forms our world, and man is not something different from, fundamentally different from earth in a level. So this also has something to do with Epicureanism. So the Epicureans believe that when a person dies, he basically turns into some other form of existence, and he's not going into. Lucretius believes that man is not going into Hades, not going into whatsoever Elysium. Not no. It's man dies. It just transforms into some sort of not living substance, for example, soil. And we need to accept this fact of perishing and our soul being perished with our body. We need to accept it, and the truth, the fundamental truth of our universe is that everything is changing. Like when something dies, it's in some way not dying, but being born into some other form of existence. And we need to realize that the universe cannot. The universe change is essential to the universe. We need to realize that change is essential to the universe. And if you are not allowing something to die away, then there's no change possible. And man is changed into soil, and soil is metamorphosed into man. So that's a pretty philosophical interpretation, but yeah, it's actually true. So Ovid was greatly inspired by Lucretius and this sort of philosophical worldview, and that's who would conclude our passage, and I would like to list some important points here. So Ovid is mentioning, is saying that elements predated the universe. Things cannot be created from nothing. And we actually know that by the principle of modern science, it's actually not only matter is being conserved. So matter and energy is being conserved, right? But in Ovid's worldview, he believed that there's some sort of power putting matters in shape. But what is really being conserved is matter. Yeah, so we know that right. So in modern science, we believe in Einstein's universe, mass and so matter and energy are conserved, and apparently in Ovid universe, matter is conserved. And in the biblical universe, God is almighty, and God created the universe out of ex nihilo. So matter is not necessarily conserved from the biblical worldview. So God creates the universe from complete void. And of course, we don't necessarily need to believe in Ovid's version or necessarily believe in either version. We're just discussing this sort of different worldview. So in the biblical version, world is created ex nihilo, from nothing. And another important point here is man is an exalted creature. And that would conclude the reading plus interpretation of line 1 through 112 of John Dryden's translation of Ovid's Metamorphoses. And that is what we read for the first club meeting last week. And just use this video for a review, or if you didn't come, just watch it. And yeah, so that would conclude.